I'm Frew from Homeless Network Scotland, and I'm here today with Ali MacDermid from the Rock Trust to talk about their Housing First for Youth pilot project, which has just been independently evaluated and named as a finalist in the Pioneering Project category at this year's Scottish Charity Awards. Delighted that you're able to join us today, Ali.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's start at the beginning. Housing First has been delivered in Scotland since about 2010, so it's something we've been talking about for a while, but at the beginning that was not specifically for young people. So can you tell us about what attracted the Rock Trust to the Housing First model and what adaptations you've identified for young people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably what attracted us in the first instance, it was twofold. I think firstly, there was a really clear and identified need for something that was an approach that was a little bit different. We on the ground in West Lothian had identified that there was a group of young people for whom the services that we had at the moment didn't really fit for. It wasn't working for these group of young people, and that were young people particularly that were leaving the care system, but also young people with higher levels of need. Perhaps group living wasn't suitable for them. Maybe they posed a risk to others, or others posed a risk to them due to their vulnerabilities. And sometimes they required more support that was on offer from the single supported accommodation that we had on offer. So there was that element, there was an identified need for something new. That kind of coincided with us learning a lot about Housing First. Obviously, as you say, it had been going since 2010. So we were already thinking about how that could be adapted to work with young people. I was then very fortunate that I was able to attend a study session with FIANSA, the European body for organisations working with the homeless. And that study session took place in Budapest, and that was a week-long residential that focused specifically on Housing First for young people. So I was able to go there and learn about it, and it was at that point that I thought these two things could marry up quite nicely. This identified need with this new way of working, which had proven, obviously very, very successful with clients of all ages, but hadn't yet been kind of proven or tested hugely and work with young people.
Brilliant. So you decided to pave the way and be some pioneers here in Scotland and the UK actually, to say let's take that model and make sure that we can make it as successful as possible for young people. So can you tell us a bit about some more of the practical things about your Housing First for Youth pilot project, where it was, when it started, your partners, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the project started in 2017. And as I say, it was very much a proof of concept to begin with. There wasn't a huge amount of data out there regarding its impact specifically for young people. I'd returned from Budapest with all this learning and eager to kind of to change and to try something new. But of course, we're a support organisation, and in West Lothian, we didn't actually have any tenancies of our own. So the first obvious thing that you need with a Housing First project is housing. And I had a chance meeting with a member of staff from Amend Housing Association. So they're an organisation that work in West Lothian. They've got about 2,500 tenancies. And I think the first thing was I struck up a really good relationship with this member of staff and explained to her some of the issues that we were facing in West Lothian, particularly in supporting, this group of care leavers with higher levels of need. And she was sort of quite struck by this, quite moved by this. And her words to me at that point were, well, we need to do something about this. What is it we can support you with?
Yeah.
So it was a really nice way to start a project from a kind of shared viewpoint, a mutual benefit. And as I say, Tracy Amend Housing Association was very, very keen to help. So they initially offered us 5 tenancies.
Okay.
They chipped in a little bit of funding. We put in a little bit of funding, and we got a little bit from the Housing First Hub Europe. And that's how the project started. So we small scale change to begin with, 5 young people initially, moved them in. It was going really, really well. And the following September, we were able to secure some additional funding from nationwide community grants. So that extended the project up to somewhere between 10 and 12 young people. I'm delighted to say that since the pilot phase of the project has finished in April 2020, West Lothian Council have decided that they will fund us to continue the project for the 12 existing care leavers that are in our service at the moment, but also add an additional 6 places onto that for young people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. So that shows a lot of faith in the project as well.
Oh, it really does. That's fantastic. It shows a lot of faith in the project and a lot of faith in the partnerships and the partners who are involved, because there's nothing better than a story of when those partnerships just start to form, and it's the right people in the right place at the right time who are able to take something that we've never seen in this country before and
Absolutely.
create it, and then make a success of it and help it to grow. So that's absolutely fantastic. And also just really important, not just about West Lothian Council saying here we can take on an extra 6 people, but that really important point about, because we always ask these questions about securing the long-term funding for the people who are in their tenancies, and how do you make it open-ended and things. So that commitment is just so important for those young people who've been in for a while.
The RRTP as well, which is great. So the additional 6 places is actually directly through RRTP funding, which is fantastic. And as you rightly say, it wouldn't be possible without all partners in there. Amond Housing Association have been fantastic, providing the accommodation, but also additional support to the young people on top of what Rock Trust are providing. We were very fortunate in that they were able to provide us with some additional funding for furnishings, so that young people had an increased choice in the furnishings that they were provided in their home. But also they provided us with a dedicated housing officer. And that just meant there was a level of consistency of approach there. And Amond themselves have fed back that their staff have developed as a result of being involved in the project. So they are more able now to work with young people across the association, which is fantastic.
Oh, no, that really is brilliant to hear. And I'm sure there's loads of the real practical learning that we could dig into. But at this point, I'm keen to move on a bit and think about the findings of the independent evaluation. And we know how important it is to have something new and independently evaluated, for someone to come in and really have a look at it all and say, okay, what's actually been achieved. And I loved reading the report, so thank you for publishing it. It was great. I always get really excited when new reports come out. But it tells us that 11 out of the 12 young people have sustained their tenancy over the course of the pilot project, which, as you said, was kind of just up until earlier this year. And that works out about a 92% tenancy sustainment rate. So massive congratulations on that, because that is really significant. But can you tell us a bit about the importance of a safe and secure home for the young people involved?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, it's worth highlighting that the group that we were working with here were young people who had, experience of the care system. So a lot of the young people that we supported had turbulent lives up until that point. They'd had a lack of, you used the word security, they'd had a lack of security, a lack of stability in their very young lives. We had, some clients who'd had, multiple moves, 15 moves before the age of 16 and things like that. So providing that safe, secure home was vitally important. It felt like we were providing the building blocks or the foundations for everything else to start to develop from. And the progress wasn't always linear. There was ups and downs, as with every project. It's important to say that. And also the progress wasn't always quick. There was elements of, sustainment for periods of time where, it was just a case of keeping things ticking along. And I think it's also really, really important to highlight the fact that these young people, completely lost my train of thought there. Yeah, sorry. Repeat the question for me.
No, we were just talking about the importance of that the security of someone's home, and you were just kind of saying some of them had so many moves before when they were so young, and which is just striking when you talk about how many times people have moved. But you were making a really important point about that none of it's linear. Sometimes like this idea that people just move in and then everything's all just okay, and every day is a progression and every day is great, and then you just create this brilliant tenancy sustainment rate. Now, you have created a brilliant tenancy sustainment rate, but you're just kind of saying about how that might not always be a straight line to get there.
Absolutely, and that's the point I was going to add, was that the tenancy sustainment rate is fantastic, and we'd based it on our target of 80%, and we'd taken that from the generic kind of across the world, across the globe, Housing First projects are around about 80% tenancy sustainment. But through reading the report and taking part in the kind of evaluation of it, it was actually some of the statements that really brought it to life for me. Rather than the rate. Of course, the rate's important, but some of the statements that were made by the young people that provided that idea of sense of home, So a sense of belonging and a sense of home. And I felt like that was really, really important. I think sometimes we take for granted what home means. We say we're going home. We don't, we're not thinking about the security or the stability or the safety that we all often take for granted. But for these young people where there has been, a lot of traumatic events or a lot of upheaval and chaos in their young lives to date, providing that thing, some of the things that we take for granted in a home, I think was vitally important. And you can see that coming through some of the narrative in the report, which is lovely.
Yeah, well, and that's great, and it does, and it strikes you so much because what you're saying is just it's so spot on, and it just reminds you that often it's the normality of what most of us know, and then for people who've never known that we just think it's normal, and then you just realise for some people that just has never been the case, and that actually what people have been looking for is just something that we would just see as so normal, but it is actually incredibly powerful, and more so than ever when we're all working from home and and everybody's spending a lot more time at home than they might have been even just a matter of months ago. It's been that reminder of the importance of that. So I think that it's always really important that we don't lose track of the importance of that secure tenancy that people have and that sense of home. But on top of that, we know that a home of your own with housing first support, it can be the best base for other important positive aspects on people's lives that are beyond just housing and tenancy sustainment rates, as important as they are. So thinking your evaluation does start to talk a little bit more about that. So can you tell us what it says about the impacts on young people's relationships, their health and well-being, and their meaningful activity?
Yeah, absolutely. There was lots of really, really nice snippets in there, and one of the nicest bits for me, and it's a personal thing, I think, what people take out of it, but one of the nicest things for me was the University of York supported us to develop an evaluation framework, which is available for anyone that's running a Housing First for Youth project. It's important to say that. And one of the measures within there was satisfaction with life. So we were able to report on the number of young people who had an improved satisfaction with life. And to me, that just felt like a really nice measure. And there was a big percentage, it was around about 90% that reported an improved satisfaction with life. And that's testament to, yes, the stability and security of the home, but also I think equally as important is the stability and security of the support, the fact that it's non-time limited, the fact that it's very much choice driven. The young people can decide, the frequency of it, but that high intensity support is available and the flexible support is available. The kind of term that we coined around about that, or that we were using around about that, I won't claim we coined it, was whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And I feel like that played a huge part in supporting those young people to get to the point where they were able to report that they had an improved satisfaction with life. So that was something that really, really jumped out to me. In terms of kind of meaningful activity and improvements in health and well-being, some young people, there were very clear improvements quite quickly. Others took time to improve. For some, there hasn't been an improvement yet. It's important to say that as well. It's really, each young person has their own individual story, and there's been improvements in their life across various areas. All young people reported some level of improvement in their life, which is fantastic. And there's some, little snippets, like there was a third of the young people are now eating healthier and exercising more, which again is quite interesting. So yeah, real varied results there, but all positive. Almost.
Yeah, and that's great. And the point you make about how varied it is really important, because everything about the Housing First model is about the individual people, and not expecting that anybody's journey through what comes after they move into their tenancy is ever going to be the same. And I think it's always really important to keep sharing that message, because you will have some people who on other measures other than their housing, they don't report any particular improvement, or not necessarily quickly. But one thing we are able to say is, if that was a young person who has been through the care system, who was at really quite a high risk of homelessness, what we're able to say is, but they're not homeless. We've achieved that part, and then we just take the time until the other things come. And some will be from day one, and others a year down the line, you'll still be working on it. But that's really important.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's important for staff to recognise as well, in terms of keeping themselves safe, in terms of keeping themselves motivated, to recognise that some of these changes might take time. And I think that's the great thing, particularly when working with young people, is we know that the young people you know, the service has been designed specifically to work with young people. The staff are experts in working with young people at that age and stage of development.
Yeah.
So you know, they're aware that the young people's brains are still developing at that point, even up to the age of 25, 26. There is that capacity and always hope that things can be better for them.
No, that's fantastic. We've probably touched on a little bit of this already, but can you just tell me your favourite story from the Housing First for Youth pilot project, the one that just never fails to make you smile and the one that gets you out your bed in the morning and motivated?
Yeah, so I mean, I love the fact that the whole project has been, from a management point of view, been evaluated, and you know, there's positive outcomes there and stuff like that. But the story that I love is actually around about the furnishings of the properties. So as I mentioned, we were very fortunate in that Amman Housing Association were able to give us some funding, which allowed us to provide additional funding to the young people to furnish their properties. So every young person got a budget of around £4,000 that they were able to use to set up their home. And most of the young people chose to go to IKEA.
Okay.
And there was one girl in particular who had gone along to IKEA and had spent an incredibly long time because she never had choice like that before in terms of, you know, furnishings, or in fact, very little choice in her life to that point, because in the care system, a lot of things for her were kind of, you know, set in stone. So she went along to IKEA and she lay on every single bed to establish which was most comfortable for her. She tried every single sofa, opened every door and every fridge to work out which was best for her. And I wasn't there, it was the support staff team that took her along. But I visited her in her tenancy about a month later when everything had been delivered and put in. And I won't forget how happy she was. She had a massive smile on her face because she'd chosen a bed that the mattress lifts up and there was storage underneath. And this was the best thing for her. So her showing me that and the smile she had on her face always kind of sticks with me, and it reinforces that idea of, you know, she had to be convinced that she owned that was hers. Nobody was going to take that away. It was hers, and she'd recognised that now. She'd had choice and felt ownership over it for the first time. And a lot of it, and she was supported by the staff at the Rock Trust as well. So a lot of that just kind of reinforced the positives of Housing First for Youth.
Oh, love it. No, that really is a fantastic story, and I think that'll just keep making us smile as well, because I can imagine spending hours shopping for all that stuff, and quite right, because the people having that sense of ownership over their own life and what's coming next, and from as simple as your sofa and your bed, you know, once you're there, then you can start to claim that ownership over other things too. So that's brilliant.
But what struck me with it also was the fact that it's something that I love to do. I love going in when I get a new place, going and shopping for things. And I started to reflect on, you know, other services that we run in the past, that I've been involved in the past, where perhaps we haven't offered as much choice to young people as we could have. So there's a bit of a learning in there for myself moving forward as well.
Yeah, really. No, that's a really important point, Ali, because there's something about the principles of Housing First that actually can apply outside of the strict application within the model. It's that way of, see, once you start offering that kind of choice and you realise you can do it and you realise the power of it and how positively powerful it can be, you just start to say, well, why don't we just do that over there? And it just opens lots of other doors, and that is really, really important. But finally, and I do love that story, so I'm so glad you shared it with us. But finally, you already mentioned a little bit about West Lothian Council and their RRTP funding for things going forward. And we know that you've also linked in with the Housing First Scotland Pathfinder programme in Edinburgh. So can you just tell us, we just want to know a little bit more about your plans for the future. You know, we're working towards a place where Housing First becomes the default offer for those going through the toughest times, and that's where we start for people. So we know that's what we're trying to get to. So we'd just love to hear a little bit more about the Rock Trust plans and how we make this opportunity available for more and more young people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very, very fortunate in that the timing of everything as well. Fortunate, and you know, there was a deliberate approach taken there as well, I suppose. But we were able to use the learning from the pilot project in West Lothian to establish the project quite quickly in Edinburgh, which was great. We used a lot of the learning about the approaches with young people, but also things like the recruitment for staff, making sure that we get the right staff that are suited to deliver in a Housing First type service. So that was great, being able to use that learning and utilise that learning. And I think that will continue the learning that we have from continuing to deliver these projects, but also the learning from the evaluation. As I say, that is available for anyone to go on. What we want is to support others and for ourselves to continue to provide the highest quality housing first services. I think that's really important to say as well. And what we see, our vision, I suppose, is that every young person across Scotland has access to the support that they need in relation to homelessness and housing. And there will be a cohort within that will benefit in all areas of Scotland from a housing first approach. The Pathfinders project in Edinburgh has been fantastic. I think there's 16 young people currently engaging with support there. There are some differences, and I'm sure in every local authority area there will be differences in terms of access and housing, in terms of in partnerships as well, and differences between urban and more rural areas as well. But as I say, our future and what we hope for the evaluation is that it can really support us to develop high quality housing first for youth services across the country.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ali. And I think that's actually just a great note for us to end on. So thank you for your time, and congratulations again on the success of the pilot project. Good luck from all of us for the upcoming Scottish Charity Awards. That's really exciting. And please pass on our best wishes to the whole team at the Rock Trust, to all your partners, and especially to the young people who are still in their own homes and still just kind of living their lives there and just looking to go through each day there. So please pass on our best wishes to all of them. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you very much.